Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mixed Magic Theater's second live stream event. Today we're going to be reading from the work of Zora Neale Hurston, Barracoon, Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston, an important new book and her last book to be published. Before we start, we're at the Pawtucket Arts Collaborative studio where we're live streaming from, and we want to express our appreciation to the board of directors and the staff at the Pawtucket Arts Collaborative, who as an arts partner in Pawtucket has stepped up and was very helpful to us when our roof started to leak and we had to shut down our theater operation temporarily. But we're going to be back in operation and we're going to keep doing things. We're going to read, myself and a few other readers who will introduce themselves a little bit later. We're going to read for about an hour. We may not get through the entire novel, the entire book. It's not a novel. But we're going to read as much as we can. And then after an hour, we're going to bring up Professor Sean Christian from Wheaton College, who is an expert on not only Zora Neale Hurston, but black literature. He's going to talk about his experience with not only the work of Zora Neale Hurston, but black literature in general. And then we're going to have a little talk back with him. So without further ado, we're going to read a chapter at a time. And we'll start with the preface so everybody will know what we're reading about. And once again, welcome to Mixed Magic Theater. This is the life story of Cujo Lewis as told by himself. It makes no attempt to be a scientific document, but on the whole is rather accurate. If he is a little lazy as to detail after 67 years, he is certainly to be pardoned. The quotations from the works of travelers in Doheny are set down, not to make this appear a thoroughly documented biography, but to emphasize his remarkable memory. 3 spellings of his nation are found: Atiko, Takao, and Takao. But Lewis's pronunciation is probably correct. Therefore, I have used Takori throughout the work. I was sent by a woman of tremendous understanding of primitive people to get this story. The thought back of the act was to set down a central truth rather than fact of detail, which is so often misleading. Therefore, he has been permitted to tell his story his own way without the intrusion of interpretation. For historical data, I am indebted to the Journal of Negro History and to the records of the Mobile Historical Society. Zora Neale Hurston, April 17th, 1931.
Hello, my name is Jomo Peters. I'll be reading chapter 1. It was summer when I went to talk with Cujo, so his door was standing wide open. But I knew he was somewhere about the house before I entered the yard because I had found the gate unlocked. When Cujo goes down into his back field or away from home, he locks his gates with an ingenious wooden peg of African invention. I hailed him by his African name as I walked up the steps to his porch, and he looked up into my face as I stood in the door in surprise. He was eating his breakfast from a round, enameled pan with his hands in the fashion of his fatherland. The surprise of seeing me halted his hand between pan and face. Then tears of joy welled up. "Oh, Lord, I knew it was you who called my name. Nobody don't call me my name from across the water but you. You always call me Kusula, just like I in the African soil." I noted that another man sat eating with him, and I wondered why. So I said, "I see you have company, Kusula." "Yeah, I got to have somebody stay with me. I've been sick in the bed for 5 months. I needed somebody to hand me some water, so I take this man, and he sleep here and take care of Cujo. But I get it well now. In spite of the recent illness and the fact that his well had fallen in, I found Cujo Lewis full of gleaming goodwill. His garden was planted, there was a deep shade under his China berry tree, and all was well. He wanted to know a few things about New York, and when I had answered him, He sat silently smoking. Finally, I told him I had come to talk with him. He removed his pipe from his mouth and smiled. "I don't care," he said. "I like to have company come see me." Then the smile faded into a wretched, weeping mask. "I'm so lonely. My wife, she left me since the 1908. Cujo all by himself." After a minute or two, he remembered me and said contritely, "Excuse me, you didn't do nothing to me. Cujo feels so lonely he can't help but cry sometime. What you want with me?" "First, I want to ask you how you feel today." Another muted silence. Then he said, "I thank God I'm on praying ground and in a Bible country." "But didn't you have a God back in Africa?" I asked him. His head dropped down between his hands and the tears sprung fresh. Seeing the anguish in his face, I regretted that I had come to worry this captive in a strange land. He read my face and said, "Excuse me, I cry. I can't help it when I hear the name call. Oh Lord, I no see African soil no more." Another long silence. Then, "How come you asked me, and we had no God back there in Africa?" "Because you said, thank God you were on praying ground and in a Bible country." "Yeah, in Africa, we always know there was a God. He was named Allahoa. But Po-Africans, we can't read the Bible, so we didn't know God had a son. We ain't ignorant, we just didn't know. Nobody don't tell us about Adam eating the apple. We didn't know about the 7 seals were sealed against us. Our parents don't tell us that. They didn't tell us about the first days. No, that's all right, we just don't know. So, that what you come to ask me?" I temporized. "Well, yes, I wanted to ask that, but I wanted to ask you many things. I want to know who you are and how you came to be a slave and to what part of Africa do you belong and how you fared as a slave and how you managed as a free man." Again, his head was bowed for a time. When he lifted his wet face again, he murmured, "Thank you, Jesus. Somebody come asked about Cujo. I want to tell somebody who is, so maybe they go to African soil someday and call him my name and somebody there say, 'Yeah, I know Kasula.' I want you everywhere you go to tell everybody what Cujo say and how come I in America's soil since the 1859 and never see my people no more. I can't talk you plain, you understand me, but I calls it word by word for you so you won't be too crooked for you. My name is not Cujo Lewis. It is Kasula. When I get in the American soil, Mr. Jim Meir, he try to call me my name, but it's too long, you understand me? So I say, well, I your property. He say, yeah. Then I say, you call me Cujo. That do. But in African soil, my mama, she named me Kasula. My people, you understand me, they ain't got no ivory by the door. When an ivory from the elephant stand by the door, then that a king, a ruler, you understand me? My father, neither his father don't rule nobody. The old folks that lived 200 years before I, don't tell me that, before I born, don't tell me the father, remote ancestor, rule nobody. My people in Africa, you understand me, they not rich. That's the truth now. I ain't gonna tell you my folks they rich and they come from high blood. Then when you go into Africa's soil and ask the people, they say, why Kasula over there in America's soil telling the folks he's rich? I tell you like it is. Now that's right, ain't it? My father's father, you understand me, he an officer of the king. He don't live in the compound with us. Wherever the king go, he go, you understand me? The king give him plenty of land, and he got plenty of cows and goats and sheep. Now that's right. Maybe after a while, he be a little chief. I don't know, but he died when I was a little boy. What he gonna do later on, that don't reach me. My grandpa, he a great man. I tell you how he go. I was afraid that Cujo might go off on a tangent, so I cut in with, but Kasula, I want to hear about you and how you lived in Africa. He gave me a look full of scornful pity and asked, where the mouse is the leader? Where is the house where the mouse is the leader? Where a house where the mouse is the leader? In the Africa soil, I can't tell you about the son before I tell you about the father, and therefore you understand me. I can't talk about the man who is the father, at T, till I tell you about the man who the father to him, at T, grandfather. Now that's right, ain't it? My grandfather, you understand me, he got the great big compound. He got plenty wives and children. His house, it is in the center of the compound. In Africa soil, the house of the husband is always in the center, and the houses of the wives, they in the circle around the house the husband live in. He don't himself to marry with so many women, no. In the Africa soil, it's the wife that go find him another wife. Suppose I in the Africa soil, Cujo he been married for 7 years, for example. His wife say, Cujo, I'm growing old, I tired, I will bring you another wife. Before she speak of that, she got the girl who he don't know in her mind. She a girl she think very nice. Maybe her husband never see her. Well, she go out in the marketplace, maybe in the public square. She see this a girl and asked her the girl, you know Cujo? The girl tell her, I've heard of him. The wife say, Cujo is good, he is kind. I'd like you to be his wife. And the girl say, come with me to my papa and mama. They go, you understand me? To the girl's parents together. They asked her questions, and she answered her for her husband. She asked them questions too, and if both sides satisfied with one another's with one another, the girl's parents say, we give our daughter into your care. She ain't ours no more. You be good to her. The wife, she come back to Cujo and make arrangements. Cujo got to pay the father for the girl. If she be a rich girl that been in the fat house for a long time, you understand me? He got to pay 2 of everything for her. 2 cow, 2 sheep, 2 goat, chickens, yams, maybe gold. The rich man keep his daughter in the fat house for a long time, sometime 2 years. She get her to dinner in there 8 times a day, and they don't leave her get in and out of bed by herself. The one what keep the fat house, he lift them in and out so they don't lose fat. The man not so rich. He can't keep his girl there long, so she not so fat. So poor man don't send his daughter. Therefore, you understand me, the man paid different price for different girl. If she the daughter of the poor family, or if she been married before or something, he don't pay much for her. When the new wife come first to her husband compound, she live in the house with the old wife. She teach her what to do and how to take care of her husband. When she learn all that, then she have a house by herself. When they get ready to build the new house, the man take the machete and chop the palm tree down and mark the place where the house gonna be built. Then he throw down a cow and have plenty of palm wine. Then all the people come and eat of the meat and drink the wine and stomp the place smooth and build the house. My grandpa, he built a wife house many times. Some men in the Africa soil don't get a no wife because they can't buy none. They ain't got nothing to give, so a wife can come to them. Some got too many. When you're hungry, it is painful, but when the belly too full, it's painful too. All the wives make food, udia, for the husband. All the men, they like it the fufu. He eat the big calabash full of full to the top with fufu. Then my grandpa, he lay down and go to sleep. The young wives, before they are old enough to take up the actual duties of wifehood, help put the husband to sleep. One make the wind for him with the fan. Another one rub the head. Maybe one clean the hands and somebody look after the toenails. Then he sleep and snore. Somebody stand guard before the door so nobody make noise and wake him. Sometime the son of a slave in the compound making too much noise. The man would stand guard, catching him and take him to my grandpa. He sit up and he look at the boy so. Then he asked him, whoever tell you that mouse can walk across the roof of the mighty? Where's that poor diggy man? I swap you for tobacco. In the olden days, I walk on your skin. That is, I would kill you and make shoes from your hide. I drink water from your skull. That is, I would have killed you and used your head for a drinking cup. My grandpa say that, but he don't never ask the chief to sell nobody to the Portuguese. Some chief, they get him mad when the slave talking so sassy, and they don't do work like they tell him. Then they sell him to the Portuguese. The chief throw orange under the table. Then he called a slave boy. He gonna go and sell. Then he called the slave boy. He gonna sell and say to the boy, "Pick me the orange under the table." The boy stoop under the table. The chief got a man standing there, maybe two. When the boy go under the table to get the orange, the chief say, "Catchy the bushman," and the men grab the boy and sell him. The chief, he ain't always glad. One day the wife die. She's still in the old man's house, and she's still in the old wife's house, and ain't never been no wife to the chief yet. She too young. Why she die, Cujo don't know. When they come to tell the chief his young wife dead, he go look. He slap his hand on his wrist, then he scream in his fist and cry. He say, "Yeah, my wife dead. All my goods wasted. I pay big price for her. I fat her and now she dead and I never sleep with her once. Yeah, I love her so, I lose so much. She dead and still a virgin. Yeah, too yay. I have a great loss." Cujo looked out over his patch of pole beans toward the house of his daughter-in-law. I waited for him to resume, but he just sat there not seeing me. I waited, but not a sound. Presently he turned to the man sitting inside the house and said, "Go fetch me some cool water." The man took the pail and went down the path between the rows of pole beans to the well in the daughter-in-law's yard. He returned, and Kosula gulped down a healthy cup full from homemade. From a homemade tin cup. Then he sat and smoked his pipe in silence. Finally, he seemed to discover that I was still there. Then he said brusquely, "Go, leave me alone. Cujo tired. Come back tomorrow. Don't come in the morning, 'cause then I be in the garden. Come when it hot, then Cujo sit in the house." So I left Cujo sitting in his door with his bare feet exposed to the cloud of mosquitoes that swarmed in the shade of the inside of his house.
And who are you?
I'm Charmaine Porter, and I'm reading Chapter 2, The King Arrives. The next day, about noon, I was again at Kosula's gate. I brought a gift this time, a basket of Georgia peaches. He received me kindly and began to eat the peaches at once. Mary and Martha, the twin daughters of his granddaughter, wandered up to the steps. The old man's love of these children was quite evident. With glad eyes, he selected 4 of the finest peaches and handed 2 to each little girl. He scolded them off to play with affectionate abuse. When they were gone, he looked lovingly after them and pointed to a little clump of sugar cane in the garden. "See that cane?" he said. I nodded that I did. "Well, I plant that cane. 'Tain't much, but I grow that so when Martha and Mary come to me and say, 'Grandpa, I want to see some cane,' I go cut and give 'em. This is a large peach tree. There is a large peach tree in the yard that bears small but delicious clingstone peaches. They were beginning to ripen. The old man gave me 1 or 2 and put 1 away for each of the twins. I was shown all over the gardens. Kosula was genial, but not one word about himself fell from his lips. So I went away and came again the following day. I brought another gift, a box of bee brand insect powder to burn in the house to drive out all the mosquitoes. He was in a vocal mood and could scarcely wait until I set the powder burning to talk about his Africa. So we settled on the porch and he talked. I reminded him that he had been telling me about the chief's losing a wife under such unfortunate circumstances and about his grandfather's compound. "I don't forgetty nothing. I remember everything since the 5-year-old. Yeah, my grandpa, he a officer of the king. He be with the king everywhere he go. You understand me? Therefore, you understand me. One man, he kill a leopard. Well, The king don't care about he kill a leopard, but the law say that when a man kill a leopard, he got to bring it to the king. The king don't want to take the beast away from the man what kill it, you understand me? But he got to take the big hairs, whiskers, that grow round the mouth. They very poison, and the king don't want none of the people to get killed. Some men's, they wicked, you understand me? And they take the hairs and make the poison. Therefore, the king say, when any man killed a leopard, he got to cover the head so no woman can see it, and bring the leopard to the king. Then the drums go beat, and Kali, all brave chiefs, come discuss this leopard that been killed. The king, he keep the head, the liver, the gall, and the skin. That always belong to the king. It all make a different medicine. All the body. He dried and make you more medicine too. But some tribe make fetish and eat the flesh, so they eat the medicine, Therefore, when a man killed a leopard, and take the hairs before he let the king know he killed the leopard, they kill that man. He a wicked man. One man, he killed a leopard. He covered the head and tied the body to a young tree, tied by the feet to a pole so that it could be carried. Well, the king called all the chiefs, and they come looking. They take off the cover from the head, and the king look at the hairs. He see one hair gone from the hole in the face where it grow. All the chief they looky too. They see the hair ain't there, so they call the man. The king say, well, you killy this beast? The man say, yeah, I kill him. How you kill this leopard? With the spear I kill him. Did you touch the head? No, I don't touch the head at all. I only a common man, and I know the head belonged to the king, so I don't touch it. The king looky at the head and looky at the man. He say, how is it this beast got the hole for the hair, but one hair not there? Tell me where the hair is. I see where it pull out. Who is that you want to kill? The man say, I don't want killing nobody. I ain't touching the hair. That's the truth now. If I touch the hair, let NCBD, that is, may I be turned over to the executioner. NCBD being the name for the executioner. Well, they search the man and find the hair. Then they try him. All day they talk Paul over. So next day they find him guilty. So they say he got to die. He a wicked man, what expect to kill somebody with the hair. Therefore, you understand me, they tie him by the left foot and wait for Aku Iri Usen, King's Day, or Great Day, all executions being saved for this day, though a few are executed on the Queen's Day. Then they take him to the place of sacrifice. The king come with his seat, and all the chiefs bring their stool too. They seated theyself, and they drum the beat. It speak with the voice of the king. Then 3 Insibidi come into place and dance. One have a mouthpiece that rattle. He shake the mouthpiece that rattle. He shake the mouthpiece and sing. What he sing, Cujo? Go and tell you. On a great day like this, we kill the one that is evil. On a day like this, we kill the bad one. Who would command the poisoned one from the leopard to kill us? On a great day like this, we kill him. Who would kill the innocent? He danced some more with the drum, and the other 2 dancing with him. Then he sings some more. A great knife that eats no other blood but human blood, let it kill him. It a great knife, it feed the earth. A great knife that eats no other blood but human blood. They dances some more. When the king make it a sign, they dance up to the man where he tied at, and with one lick chop their head off. The head fall to the ground, and the mouth works so it open and shut many times. But quick, they put a piece of the stick from the banana tree in the mouth. Then they can open the door when they get it ready. If they don't do that, the jaw closed and they can't get it open no more. The body of the man, they buried in the ground. The head, they put it in the sacrifice place with the other heads. The king go back to his village, but the chief have court every day. All day somebody say to him, "This man touched my wife. This a man commit adultery." Everything be done there, done open there. Not so many secrets. When a man kills somebody there, he be tried open, and all the boys and men in the village hear the trial. I don't know how come he done it, but one man killed another, one with the spear. So they arrested that man and tie his hands with palm cord. Then they pick up the dead man and carry him to the public square, the marketplace. You understand? Then they send message by the drum to the king in the village, where he act to come set on the trial inside the case. In Africa, you understand, if somebody steal or commit adultery, the chief of the village, he try it. But if a man kills somebody, then they send for the king, and he come inside the case. Therefore, when this man spared the other one through the breast, they send word for the king to come. The old folks, you understand me? The wise ones, they go out in the woods and get leaves. They know which ones, and mash the leaves with water. Then they paint the dead man all over with this, so he don't spoil till the king come. Maybe the king don't get there till the next day. When the king come, my grandfather, he come with him. Before anybody see the king, we know he is almost there because we hear the drum. When a little chief travel, he go quiet. But when the king go, any place you understand me, the drum go before to let the people know the king come. That night, everybody sit up with the dead man all night and eat meat and drink palm wine and banana beer. Late the next day, you understand me, the king come with the chiefs of the other villages to help him side the case. So the chief of our village, he went out a short way to meet the king. Then he put down and killed cows and goats. It's too late that day to hold the trial, you understand me, so they decided to hold it the next day. So they did. The king, he takes a special seat they bring for him, and the chiefs from the other towns, they sit on their stool of rank in different places round the square. The dead man is laying on the ground in the center where everybody see him. The man that killed him, he tied to where folks can see him too. Therefore, they tried the man. They asked the man why he killed this other one. He say the man worked juju against him, so his child died, and his cows, they stay sick all the time. The king say, if this man worked juju against you, why don't you tell the chief and the headman of the village? Why don't you tell the king? Don't you know we got a law for that, for people that work juju? You ain't supposed to kill the man. So they talk, all the chiefs sitting around. They asking him questions too. In Africa, the law ain't no man can make out he crazy like and get an excuse from the law. If you kill anybody, you gonna die too. They gonna kill you. So the king said, I hear the evidence, but this man got no cause to kill that other one. Therefore, he must die. The man stand there. He don't cry. He don't talk. He just looks straight at the king. Then all the chiefs, they get around the king, and they talking while ain't nobody know what they say but them. Then all the chiefs, they go back and take their seats again. Then the drums begin to play. The big drum, Katakumba, the drum that speaks like a man, it begins to talk. And the man, what is Nsibidi, he begin to dance. They lead the murderer out into the center of the square. The Nsibidi, he dance, gesture. And as he danced, he watched the eye of the king and the eye of all the chiefs. One man will give him the sign. Nobody know which one will give the sign. They decide that when they was whispering together. Therefore the executioner dance until he get the sign of the hand. Then he dance up to the murderer and touch his breast with the point of the machete. He dance away again, and the next time he touched the man's neck with his knife. The third time that he touched the man, other men rush out and seize the murderer and take the palm cord and stretch him face to face upon the dead man and tie him tight so he can't move himself. When the executioner touched the murderer with his knife, that is a sign that he is dead already. So they wrap the cord around his neck and around the neck of the dead man. They wrap the cord around his body and around the body of the dead man. They wrap his arm and the dead man's arm with the same cord. His leg is wrapped as one with the leg of the man he done killed. So they leave him there. His nose is tied to the nose of the dead man. His lips touch the lips of the corpse. So they leave him. The king and the chief talk Paul over about other things while they watch the struggles of the murderer. Sometime, if he be a strong man and the person he killed be little, he managed to get up and go a little way with the body. But if the corpse be heavy, he lay right there till he die. If he cry for water, nobody pay no attention to him, because he is dead since the machete first touched him. So they say, how can a dead man want water? If he cry to be cut loose, nobody pay attention to him. They say, how can a dead man want to be loose? The other dead man don't cry. How come this man cry? So they leave him there. But people watch until he die too. How long it take? Sometime he die next day. Sometime 2 or 3 days. He don't live long. People can stand the smell of the horse, the cow, and other beasts, but no man can stand the smell in his nostrils of a rotten man.
All right. Bernadette Fitzwiley, reading chapter 3. When they try to take the man that steal the leopard hair, it's the time to cut grass so it don't choke in the corn. Before the grass be dry, though, no to burn. My grandpa, he take a sick in his compound. How come he take sick? Cujo don't know. I a little boy and I don't know why he died. But Cujo know his father take him to the compound of his father. I didn't see him after he died. They buried him right away so no enemy can come look down in his face and do harm to his spirit. They bury him in the house. They dig up the clay floor and bury him. We say in Africa, soil. We live with you while you live alive. How come we can't live with you after you die? So you know they bury a man in his house. The coffin sitting there, just like he in there. The people come fetch her presents and place them in the coffin. The first wife, she sat at the head of the coffin. When somebody comes, she cried. She cried with the song. The other wives, they join in and cry with her. When we come in, the chief wife of my grandpa got up from the head of the coffin and threw the veil over her face. The other wives threw off the veil too. The chief wife, she weeping very loud and said, "It is 40 years since he married me, and now you find me a widow." Only yesterday he was worried about his wives and children, and here he is lying today in need of nothing. My father say, "Oh, the ground eats the best of everything." Then he weepy too. The chief wife, she cries some more, and the other wives cry and shake their voice. Ay, ay, ay. The chief wife say, "He was a wonderful man." Then my father say, that is true. The ground can prove it. Then we set ourselves on the floor and the wives cover up their faces and get quiet. The men sorry he did too. They come bring presents and looky at the coffin. They drink palm wine and sing sorrowful for him a song. Oh, tore wona no lawyer, yeah, oh, nia raya nia. Then somebody else come, and the chief wife, she rise and start to weeping again. It's very sad. They see the head of all the wives are shaved. They see the cover over the face. Therefore, you understand me. Everybody feels sad. The first wife, she cry and say, how long since we were married? And now we are nothing but a widow. The husband, what do you know how to weep women? The husband, what know how to prepare a house? The husband who know every secret of women. The husband what knows what is needed and gives it without asking. How long since we were married? And now we're nothing but a widow. They call my grandpa brave and praise giving names. Then they cry with another song. Whoever shake the leaf off of that tree, a weak shrub, we're still smelling it. Whoever killed our husband, we shall never forget. The wives cry like that every time somebody come in. When nobody come, they sit quiet. 2 years they must be widow. 1 year they don't touch water to the face. They wash it always with tears. In the Africa soil, the women washes it always with tears. Grieve for their husband like that. You understand me? All day, all night, the people come, and every time somebody comes, the women cry. Kosala got the remote look in his eyes, and I knew he had withdrawn within himself. I rose to go. You going very soon, he commented. Yes, I said, I don't want to wear out my welcome. I want you to let me come and talk with you again. Oh, I don't care if you come see me. Cujo like having company. Now I go water the tater vines. You see, can you find a ripe peach on the tree and give it to me? Take home? I put the ladder in the tree and climbed up in the easy reach of a cluster of pink peaches. He saw me to the gate and graciously said goodbye. Don't come back here till next week. I need to chop some grass in the garden.
I'm Ricardo Pizzwali. I'll be reading chapter 4. In the 6 days between my visits to Kosula, I worried a little lest he deny himself to me. I had secured 2 Virginia hams on my trip south, and when I appeared before him the following Tuesday, I brought him one. He was delighted beyond his vocabulary, but I read his face, and that was more than enough. The ham was for him. For us, I brought a huge watermelon, right off the ice. So we cut it in half, and we just ate from our heart to Rhine as far as we were able. Then it was necessary to walk down so he showed me over the old landmark Baptist church at his very gate, where he is the sexton. Watermelon, like too many other gorgeous things in life, is too much fleeting. We lightened our ballast and returned to the porch. Now, you want me to tell you some more about what I did in Africa soil? Well, you good to me. I don't care. I tell you something, it's too hot. I work anyhow. My father, he named Olulula. He not a rich man. He had 3 wives. My mama, she named Nifon Lolo. She the second wife. That's right. And now I tell you, I the son of the chief wife. That ain't right. I the son of the second wife. My mama had one son before me, so I her second child. She had 4 more children after me, but they ain't all the children my father got. He got 9 by the first wife and 3 by the third wife. When the girls married, they married. They like see how many children they can have for their husband. Are there some barren women? I asked. No, they all got children by their husband. If they don't get no babies, they go talk to the old folks. Then the old ones go down in the bush and get the leaves and make a tea and give the girl something to drink. Then they get babies for the husband. Sometimes a woman don't get no baby though. Cujo don't know why. In the compound, I play games with all the children my father got. We wrestle with one another. We see which one can run the fastest. We claim the palm tree with coconut on it, climb the palm tree with coconut on it, and we eat that. We go in the woods and hunt the pineapple and banana and eat that too. Now, how do we find the fruits? By the smell. Sometimes my mama say we run a Play-Doh. They tell us that and do. Come sit down and I'll tell you something. Just tell you stories about the animals when they talk like peoples. Cujo don't know the time when the animals talk like folks. The old folks, they tell me that. Cujo very much like to listen. I said, I like to hear stories. Do you remember any of the stories your mama told you? Well, said Kasula, I'll tell you the story next time you come in with me. Now I tell you about Cujo when he was a boy back in Africa. One day, the chief sent word to the compound. He want to see all the boys that done see 14 rainy seasons. That making me very happy because I think he gonna send me to the army. I then about 15 rainy seasons old. But in the Africa soil, they teaches the boys long time before they go in the army. Therefore, you understand me, when the boy about 14, they start training him for the war. They don't go fight right in the right way. No, first they got to know how to walk in the bush and see not show themselves. Therefore, first the fathers, elders, take the boys on journey to hunt. Sometime it go and come back before night. Sometime it take 2-3 sleeps. They got to learn to step on the ground. They got to know whether what they hunt turn this way or that way. They learn to break the branch and turn it so they can find their way back home. They got to knot the long leaves so the folks behind them know to follow. The fathers teach us how to know a place for the house, and we must choppy bark for the biggest tree so nobody else go running can know it's a good place to sleep in. Make me hunt many times. We shoot the arrow from the bow. We chunky spear, we kill the beast and fetch them home with us. I'm so glad I'm going to be a man and fight in the army like my big brothers. I like he beat the drum too. They teach us how to sing the war song. We sing when we walk in the bush and make like we gonna fight the enemy. Then the drum talkie with us and we sing the song, Ofo, Ofo, tingy, 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 tingy. Hey then, Ofu, Ofu, tingy, 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 tingy. Batan, Ofun, Batan, Queso. When the day breaks, the cock will crow. When the day breaks, the cock will crow. When the day breaks, the cock will crow. When somebody crosses our roof, we will tear a nation down. That's the actual meaning. The actual meaning is when we get there, we shall make our demands. And if we are crossed, we shall tear down the nation who defies us. Every year they teaches us more war. But the king, Acon, say he don't go make no war. He makes us strong so nobody don't make a war on us. We know the secret of the gates when the enemy come, and we know they come. We can run hide ourselves in the bush. Then they don't see nobody, they goes away. Then we come behind them and fight till they all dead. 4, 5 rainy seasons, it keep up like that. Then I grow tall and big. I can run in the bush all day and not be tired. Kasula ceased talking and looked pointedly at his melon rind. There was still a lot of good red meat and a quart or two of juice. I looked at mine. I had more meat left than Kasula did. Nothing was left of the first installment but a pleasant memory. So we lifted the half rinds to our knees, and started all over again. The sun was still hot, so we did the job leisurely. Watermelon halves have nothing like anything else, and thorough watermelon eating being what it is, a long, overstuffed silence fell on us. When I was able to speak, somehow the name Juju came into my mind. So I asked Kasula what he knew about it. He seemed reluctant to answer my question, but finally he did so. I tell you what, I know about Juju. What the old folks do in Juju house, I don't know. I can tell you that. I'm too young yet. That don't teach me. I know that all the grown men, they go to the mountain once a year. It has something to do with them, with making the weather, not what they do there. Cujo don't know. Now, that's right. I don't make out I know what go on with the grown folks. When I come away from Africa, I was only a boy 19 years old. I had one initiation. A boy must go through many initiations before he become a man. I just initiate one time. One day when I was in the marketplace, when I see a pretty girl walk past me, she's so pretty I follow her a little way, but I don't speak. We don't do we don't do that in Africa, but I like it. One old man, he saw me watching the girl. He didn't say nothing to me, but he went to my father and say, "Your boy about breaking down the corn. He's getting to be a man. He knows the secret of man. So put goats down or a cow and let us fix a banquet for him." So my father say, "All right." But first, they don't fix the banquet for me. They have in Africa, a small stick on a string, and when they make it go around fast, it roars like a lion or the bull. They have 3 kinds. One they calls it the he, and one the she. And one they call it the dog, because it make it bark that way, the bull roar. No woman must hear this thing. If she do, she die. So they stay inside and shutted the door right. They put me in the initiation house. After a while, I hear a great roaring outside the door, and they say to me, "Go see where that is." As soon as I went outside, I done hear it at the door no more. It sound way off in the bush. They tell me to go in the bush to hunt it. And as soon as I go in the bush to find out what it is, I hear behind me, in front of me, everywhere, but never find it. The men are playing with me. Way after a while, they take me into the banquet and tell me the secret of the thing that makes the sound. At the banquet, they make me sit and listen with respect. They tell me, "You are just below us. You are not yet a man. All men are still fathers to you." There's plenty of roast meat and wine at the banquet, and all the men, they pinching my ear tight to teach me to keep the secrets. Then I get a peacock feather to wear. In America, so I see plenty of women wear the peacock feathers, but they don't know what they do. In Africa, a boy got to get plenty secrets inside that he don't talk for. He get it the peacock feather.
I'm Lori Smalls. I'll be reading chapter 5. When I get the peacock feather, I stand around the place where the chief talk with the wise men. I hope they see Cujo and think he a grown man. Maybe they call me to the council. The fathers don't never call me out, but I like it very much to be there and listen when they talk. I like it go in the marketplace too, to see the pretty gals with their gold bracelets from their arm and from their hand to the elbow. They look very fine to Cujo. When they walk, they sling their arm so the bracelet ring. I like to hear that. It sounds so pretty. One day I see one girl I like very much to marry, but I'm too young to take a wife. But I like her. I think about her all the time. Therefore, I go home and say to my folks, be careful how you treat such and such a girl. They look at me, then they go ask for the girl to be my wife when I get a little older. One day, therefore, I in the marketplace. 3 men come from what's strange to us. They say they from Dahomey, and they want to see our king. The king, they say, all right, he talk with them. They say, do you know the king of Dahomey? Acheon, I say, I've heard of him. The men from Dahomey say, do you know all the strong names he got? Do you know he got one name, Tanga, Mankafekpa, a rock, a fingernail cannot scratch it, see? Do you know they speak about him and say, Kini, 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 lion of lions. Some say a small animal done cut his teeth, evil done entered into the bush meaning the surrounding tribes who feel the sharpness of their homie's tooth. This king sent to you, and he say he wish to be kind. Therefore you must send him half of your crops. If you don't send it, he make war. Our king, Acheon, say, Aste, you king, did he ever hear the strong name of Acheon? They call me the mouth of the leopard, that he take hold and never let go. Tell him the crops ain't mine. They belong to the people. I can send and take the people crop to send to the king of Dahomey. He got plenty land. Let him stop making slave hunt on other people and make his own crops. The king of Dahomey don't like that message. But Acheon so strong, he afraid to come make war, so he wait. The king of Dahomey, you know, he got very rich catching slaves. He keep his army all the time, making raids to grabby people, to sell to the people of Dahomey. Don't have no time to raise gardens and make food for themselves. Maybe the king of Dahomey never came out to make raid in Takoi, but one trader from Takoi go down to Dahomey. He a very bad man, and the king of Takoi say, leave this country. That man want big honors in the army, so he go straight into Dahomey, and he say to the king, I show you how to take Takoi. He telling them the secrets of the gates. Therefore, you understand me, they come to make war, but we don't know how they come fight us. They march all night long, and we in the bed sleep. We don't know nothing. About daybreak, when the folks that sleep get up, get wide awake with the noise when the people of Dahomey break the great gate. I not woke yet. I still in bed. I hear the gate when they break it. I hear the yells from the soldiers while they chopping the gate. Therefore, I jump out of bed and looky. I see a great many soldiers with French guns in the hand and a big knife. They got the women soldiers too, and they run with the big knife and make noise. They catch people, and they saw the neck like they was with a knife when they can twist the head so and come off the neck. Oh, Lord, Lord. I see the people getting killed so fast. The old ones, they try to run away from the house, but they dead by the door. And the women soldiers, they got their head. Oh, Lord. Cujo wept sorrowfully and crossed his arms and breast with fingers touching his shoulders, his mouth and eyes wide open as if he still saw the gruesome spectacle. Everybody, they run to the gates so they can hide themselves in the bush. You understand me? Some never reach the gates. The women soldiers catch the young ones and tie them down by the wrist. No man can run strong like a woman soldier from their homie. So they cut off the head. Some of they snatch jawbones while the people ain't dead. Oh Lord, Lord, Lord. The poor folks with their bottom jaw tore off their face. I'm running so fast to the gate, but some of the men from the homie, they there too. I'm running to the next gate, but they there too. They surround the whole town. They had all 8 gates. One gate looking like nobody there, so I make haste and running toward the bush. But the men of the homie, they there too. Soon as I get out the gate, they grab me and they tied the wrist. I begged them, please let me go back to my mama, but they don't pay me no attention. They tie me with the rest. While they catching me, the king of my country, he come out to the gate. They grab him. They see that he the king, and they were very glad. Therefore, you understand me, they take him to the bush where the king of the homie wait with some of the chiefs until Tekoa can be destroyed. When they see our king, they say to his soldiers, bring me the word changer, the public interpreter. When the word changer came out, he said, Asti, this man, why he put his weakness against the lion of the homie. The man changed the word for our king. Achion listened. Then he said to the king of the homie, why don't you fight like men? Why don't you come in the daytime so that we can meet face to face? The man changed the word so the king of the homie knew what he said. Then the king of the homie said, get in line and go to the homie so the nations can see I conquered you and sell Achion to the Barracoon. Achion said, I'm going to the homie. I born a king in Tekoa. My father and his fathers ruled before I was born. Since I've been a full man, I ruled. I die a king, but I be no slave. The king of their homie asked him, you not going to go to their homie? He tell him, no, I ain't going to go off the ground where he be the king. He the king of their homie, don't say no more. He looked at the soldier and pointed at the king. One woman soldier stepped up with a machete and chopped off the head of the king and picked it up off the ground and handed it to the king of their homie. When I see the king dead, I try to escape from the soldiers. I try to make it to the bush, but all the soldiers overtake me before I get there. Oh, Lord, Lord. When I think about that time, I try not to cry no more. My eyes, they stop crying, but the tears running down inside me all the time. When they pull me with them, I call my mama name. I don't know where she is. I don't see my family. I don't know where they is. I beg the men to let me go finally, to go find my folks. The soldiers say they ain't got no ears for my crying. The king of their homie come to hunt slaves to sell. So they tie me in the line with the rest. The sun is just rising. All the day they make us walk. The sun's so hot. The king of their homie, he ride in a hammock. And the chiefs with him, they got hammocks too. Poor me, I walk. The men of their homie, they tie us in a line so no one can run off. In the hand, they got the head of the people they kill in Tekoa. Some got 2, 3 heads they carry with them to their homie. I so sad for my home. I getting hungry by that day, but I glad when we drink the water. Before the sun go down, we come by a town. It got a red flag on the bush. The king of the homie sent men with the word changer to the town, to the chief, to come in the hammock and talk with the king. Then he take down the red flag and hang a white flag. What they say, Cujo don't know. But he bring the king a present of yams and corn. The soldiers make a fire and cook the grub and eat it. Then we march on. Every town the king sent message. We sleepy on the ground that night. But the king and the chiefs, they hang in a hammock in the tree and sleepy in them. Then nothing done harm them on the ground. Poor me, I sleepy on the ground and cry. I ain't used to no ground. I think too about my folks and I cry. All night I cry. When the sun rise, we eat and we march on to their homie. The king sent word to every town we pass, and the headman come out. If they got a red flag, that mean they agreed that all they gonna pay no taxes to their homie. Then they say they will fight. If a white flag, they pay to their homie what they asked of them. If a black flag, it mean that the ruler is dead and the son not old enough to take the throne. In Africa, so when they see the black flag, they don't bother. They know they be taking advantage if they make war when nobody in charge. The head of the men of their homie, they got to smell very bad. Oh Lord, I wish they could bury them. I don't like to see my people head in the soldiers' hands, and the smell making me so sick. The next day, they make camp all day so that the people and the kid can smoke like the heads so they don't spoil no more. Oh Lord, Lord, we got to see there, and we see the heads of our people making smoke on sticks. We stay there in that place till 9 days. Then we march onto their homie soil. Kasula was no longer on the porch with me. He was squatting by the fire in their homie. His face was twitching in abysmal pain. It was a horror mask. He had forgotten I was there. He was thinking aloud and gazing into the dead faces in the smoke. His agony was so acute, he never noticed my preparation to leave. So I slipped away as quietly as possible and left him with his smoke pictures.
So that's going to conclude our reading portion of the program. We're going to bring up right now Professor Sean Christian of Wheaton College, and we're very happy to have him here with us. You can take this seat, and let me bring the music stand. Before we start, Sean, Professor, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Sean has some prepared comments. He was our only guest at the last performance that we live streamed of Sweat and Gilded Sixpence last week, and he and my son Jonathan carried on a fantastic conversation immediately following that, and so we're going to kind of build on that, and so first we'll start with you, Sean.
Thank you, Ricardo. Yes, my name is Sean Christian. I teach at Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, so a connection to Hurston is very personal that way. I should say that I betrayed a lot of my own training and extracurricular activities. I used to be an actor in undergraduate school by not projecting during that interview at the end of Sweat and Gilded Sixpence, but I'll do my best to project today. I enjoy a lot of Hurston, not just in terms of teaching her, but just sitting around reading so much of her corpus, and she has an amazing body of work, and so I want to encourage people to read certainly beyond Sweat and Gilded Sixpence and Barracoon. There's so much more still untapped, unexplored, even though many people have been writing about and talking about Zora and Hurston for a long time, thankfully. And my own work is on the Harlem Renaissance primarily, and Ricardo, I would never say that I'm an expert on anybody, especially a figure like Zora and Hurston. In fact, I think the most anyone can aspire to is to be a student, a lifelong student of a figure like Hurston. So I thank you all for the opportunity to come here today and share a little insight on Hurston from my vantage point. I had some remarks that I prepared about Barracoon that I'm thinking about in terms of the closeness and trauma of history. So I'll start with that, and then I think you had a couple of questions that we could pick around a little bit. So Zora Hurston, anthropologist, dramatist, dancer, folklorist, humorist, novelist, and dynamic storyteller. An original Southern girl by way of Alabama and Florida, who became and lived as the complicated, at times politically conservative, trickster, lover of black people, and Renaissance woman for which she is often remembered and celebrated. Zora Neale Hurston began the journey that became Barracoon a long time ago. Indeed, Hurston first interviewed Kosula, or Cujo Lewis, nearly a century ago, 91 years ago to be exact. Though 1927 is some time ago, its distance is not as far as it might appear. 1927 is still part of our living history. Indeed, a few African American centenarians and nonagenarians help make the point. Among a relatively sizable number of known and lesser known African American elders, in 1927, civil rights activist and Freedom Ways editor Esther Cooper Jackson was 10. NASA scientist Katherine Johnson was 9. Restaurateur Leah Chase was 4. And actor Cicely Tyson was just 3 years old. 1927 also brought the births of actors Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte, and opera diva Leontine Price. All of them just a few reminders of the closeness of our history. As editor Deborah Plant notes, Barracoon is the product of this close but complex history, which, for Hurston, included charges of plagiarism, negotiations with her professors and patron to realize her own methods for and perspectives about gathering and documenting the life experiences of Black folk, especially in the South, and much listening, witnessing, exchanging, learning, and marveling at African American folk life. Barracoon is now, finally, a full part of Hurston's multi-layered legacy. Publication of Barracoon and our reading of it today reinforce Kosula and Hurston as parts of our living history, and especially in the context of Mixed Magic's productions of Sweat and Gilded Six Bits. They provide another palpable instance of Hurston's wide-ranging body of work, as well as her commitment to learning and making full stories of African American life available. Or as she put it, quote, "I had spent 2 months with Kosula, who is called Cujo, trying to find the answers to my questions. Some days we ate great quantities of clingstone peaches and talked. Some days we ate watermelon and talked. Once it was a huge mess of steamed crabs. Sometimes we just ate. Sometimes we just talked. At other times, neither was possible. He just chased me away. He wanted to work on his garden or fix his fences. He couldn't be bothered. The present was too urgent to let the past intrude." End quote. As I reflect on what she experienced with Kosula and how she recorded and reported it, I'm reminded of her motivations for not only interviewing him, but also her work over many years to publish a full account of their exchange. "All these words from the cellar," she writes, "but not one word from the sold. The kings and captains whose words move ships, but not one word from the cargo. The thoughts of the black ivory and the coin of Africa had no market value. Africa's ambassadors to the New World have come and worked and died and left their spore, but no recorded thought." Perhaps, as several of you are, I am still reflecting on this powerful text and what it offers us. Among its many lessons and provocations, I think that Barracoon especially compels us to ponder, rather than answer this eternally heavy but unanswerable, incomprehensible question: how does one survive the inexpressible violence of slavery? When I think on this question, Kosula's words, so powerfully rendered by our readers today, again scar my heart and mind. "Oh Lord, Lord, when I think about that time, I try not to cry no more. My eyes, they stop crying, but the tears run down inside me all the time." In his words here and throughout Barracoon is the painful reminder that history is often traumatic for African Americans. How we carry that trauma, injurious as it remains even to this day, and live through it is much of what Hurston captures in Barracoon, and that sites such as the Smithsonian African American History Museum and the National Lynching Memorial attempt to do today. As Sweat and Gilded Six Bits and her transcription of Kosula's words illustrate, we might describe and understand Hurston's work as a commitment to narrate the journey of her people, Kosula, the Dilias, the Missy Mays, the Janies, the Joes, the tea cakes, and countless others, as they lived and in the ways that they would speak of and narrate their own lives. In this way, I read her work, this array of essays, short stories, novels, anthropological studies, and folklore, as an effort to reflect the humanity of her people and offer the truth of their struggles, dreams, and joys, not simply as legible, especially for anyone who is willing to listen, but also as art, worthy of celebration and preservation because they were and are aesthetically powerful, relevant, and ever evolving. Indeed, what Hurston sought and bequeaths to us now are the languages that learned us, the words that give voice to our truths, and the words that enable us to know ourselves as human. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Sean, I have to tell you, I'm so inspired. I'm almost without words, which is, for those of you who know me, that's pretty hard. The phrase that you chose to quote from the book about I don't cry outside anymore, all my tears fall inside. When Lori read that line, it just jumped off the page at me. Yeah. So when you repeated it, I was immediately just drawn right back to it. But I was also, it sounded like something she would write. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that was one of the things that I hope you can speak to, and that is how her language, how she captured her way of telling black people's stories, mm-hmm. and then his way of telling black people's stories were very much alike, mm-hmm. in many ways. Mm-hmm. Do you think? Let me just let you address that.
Sure. Last week when we talked a little bit about this, I talked about how I see Hurston's method, and I say that she was someone who paid a lot of attention, right? And Jonathan asked me, what do I think about that in terms of today? And I think that one of Hurston's lessons for us is to learn how to pay attention. Mm-hmm. So what you hear and see in that similarity is the work of a person who paid a lot of attention. If you read her writings and you know kind of how she operated, she sat and observed a lot, but she also got in there with folks too, right? She didn't take on the kind of objective observed approach that they talk about in anthropology. Mm-hmm. She was a true participant observer, right? So she listened, right? And she was very meticulous about how she captured the language, right? But it's also her, right? It's how she spoke. It's how she was raised. And it's the sounds that she was around all the time. But she had an innate ear, more than most of us, to kind of capture those nuances. And so the transcription was really powerful because she was able to really get at and try to transcribe how Cudjoe spoke, because she had such good training, both, if you will, anthropologically, but just also growing up in the South and the different contexts that she lived.
Another thing that one can help but be struck by in reading Barracoon was how well defined the roles of men and women were in the African society, and in some ways, when you look at Sweat and Gilded Six Bits, a lot of those things stayed intact. I think the difference is he spoke of the role of women with reverence. I mean, he understood their power, he understood their position, and respected it, and understood how important it was to place value on women and wives and children. What do you think? How do you think that changed when she got to Gilded Six Bits and Sweat?
That's a really great question, and it was one that I thought you might ask, but in a different way. So I'm prepared for it. But the really interesting, one of the interesting things about your choice, Mixed Magic's choice, to do Sweat and Gilded Six Bits is this really interesting pairing of very powerful and complicated protagonists. These female characters, Missy May and Delia. And I think that if you are not reading closely and paying attention, you might fall into some stereotypical understanding about the devaluing of these black women characters, right? But these are some strong, complicated women, right? Who are doing some really interesting things. And so they are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Delia herself has this particularly interesting conflict around her religious kind of walk, if you will, and what she allows to happen in that relationship, right? Missy May is trying to be a good, dutiful wife perhaps in the ways we were thinking about in terms of these traditional roles, but falls prey to a lot of the challenges and the trickery of the time, right? So I think for Hurston, she is identifying women that she knew who had certain kinds of struggles, perhaps some of her own struggles, and given her biography, and is bringing them to folks to say these are the real people who are doing the thing in the world, right? And we should pay attention to them, and we should understand that in their lives are profound moral stories about humanity that all of us can take something from.
Well, when I was reading some of her information recently and came to realize that she was one of the outspoken critics of Brown versus the Board of Education, and that was one of the things that alienated her from a lot of black society, black culture, and she found herself almost forgotten. But then when you look back on her body of work, you look at things like Color Struck, you know, which really dealt with the color consciousness and the color coding in Black American society. But you look at Their Eyes Were Watching God, you look at Sweat and Gilded Sixpence, and you see an intense feminism and independent thinking that on one level you could say, I can see where this got you in difficult waters with certain parts of the culture at the time. I, for one, you know, and I've written about it in a play of mine, when I say there was no salvation in integration. What she was saying about Brown versus the Board of Education is, we don't need to go to school with white people. We need better schools ourselves, and we'll be okay. You know, this takes away our autonomy. It takes away our individuality. We just want to. We have the capacity to learn, and she lived her life that way. She had the capacity to learn, and she was in arguments with everybody. She fought the black intelligentsia, the black intellectual, even though history has shown that not every one of those critics of hers, or people who were lined up as her critics, were indeed critics. Langston Hughes being one of them. Some were, though. Right. So, in this age of the Me Too movement and a heightened black consciousness and also a heightened black insecurity about our security. What do you think Zora would, how would she react to what's happening now in comparison to what her life was, what she wrote about in her lifetime?
Oh, Ricardo. Okay. There's so much to respond to there, but I'll try to start with your immediate question. I do think that Hurston would look at our moment, our historical moment, and not be too surprised, and say, we've been here before. A lot of what we're experiencing is not new. And she might be a bit angry at us for the kinds of reactions that we're having. Some people are falling out and really, distraught to the point of incapacity. And I think she would say, get up, and really understand your history, right? And recognize that this has always been in some ways, and sadly will continue to be. Right. So you've got to figure out what the long game is for your life around these kinds of issues and challenges. You brought up Me Too, and I think that One of the really powerful things that comes across, of course, in Sweat and the Gilded Sixpence is how women were exploited, right? Both in the home and outside of the home. And I think she would see some resonance in the kind of speaking back to those structures and those forces. But I think it's important for us to understand Hurston not as, again, this very, very celebrated figure that she is now, because you're absolutely right that she was ostracized. But that we need to kind of unpack that a bit more, right? It was not nearly as simple as sometimes, us versus them or her versus them. Hurston was complicated, right? As we all are. And to think about someone, a woman in the 1920s and teens, a black woman saying the kinds of things that she was saying with the immense amount of talent that she had, they didn't know what to do with her, right? And she didn't care if they didn't know, because she was like, I'm gonna do it anyway, right? But that came at a cost, right? Yeah. As we all know, when you push against the norms, sometimes you suffer and suffer tragically, right? And so one of the things that I always think about is, as uncommon as Hurston was in many respects, how she died actually was and is too common among black women in the 20th century, right? A lot of black women died in poverty and unknown, right? Mm-hmm. So we can take a lot of lessons from her life, right? It is not the tragedy as she talked about and How to Be Color Me. She's not this tragedy that we should be bemoaning in some sense, but she lived a very complicated life, and I think as much as she could on her own terms, right? In as much as anyone could live on their own terms as a black woman in the early 20th century.
Well,
Sean, I just want to speak to reiterate at the time that she wrote.
The speaker is Bernadette Pitts-Wiley.
Okay. But at the time that she wrote Sweat and the Gilded Sixpence, it was like phenomenal that never mind a black woman was speaking out, but a woman period was speaking out. And Zora in particular was like right at the height of when feminism was really coming into its own, suffragettes and the whole 9 yards. Okay, and so it's just amazing that she was able to articulate and that she didn't die before she died.
That's right.
Because like you said, that was back in the day.
Yeah.
You just didn't.
Yeah.
And also remember that we were just coming out of that, it was second or third generations of having been enslaved, so there was like a lot going on there.
And to your point, Bernadette, I mean, you think about all the ways that she positions herself as, a different and against the kind of norms, right? So she chose to write about the folk, right? The prostitutes, the pimps, the bootleggers and the like, because she saw in them a truth and honesty that often many of the representations that were being promoted by the middle class blacks, let's say, or the integrationist organizations seem to kind of belie and deny. And she wanted to say, no, let's extend that view a little bit. But again, to do that as a woman, right? And interestingly enough, people like Richard Wright were also looking at those same types, but wanted to address a particular kind of agenda. And so Wright, of course, is the one who gets catapulted up, and the sexism there is wrought in lots of ways, but she kept on going anyway. And that's the other thing I always take about Hurston and thinking about how she died again in a kind of obscurity. She kept on going anyway. I mean, let's not forget that one of the most important and common ways that black women made a living was as maids. And Hurston started her career as a maid and ended her life as a maid, right? So, but yes.
Well, Sean, we have both of the lead women from Sweat and Gilded Sixpence who were part of the readers, Charmaine and Lori. Yeah. And I'm going to give them an opportunity, and everybody else an opportunity, and Jomo, who played Slimmons, who was one of the readers also.
Slim Slimmons, but yes, I always had him much more robust.
Well, we tried to fatten him up, but but it didn't work quite as well. But ladies, first, do you all have a question or comment about Barracoon, about playing Missy and Delia, and that you wanted to add to our conversation?
Lori Small speaking first. I think that Delia's character was, as you said, more than complicated. but she spoke of a quiet inner strength. And it was odd, when I was reading Barracoon, I didn't know if Zora felt any conflict in interviewing this man. Did she ever note that?
So, a lot of scholars have been talking about a couple of the reactions that she had to the experience. And interviewing Kusula was two parts, right? There was an earlier period in 1927, and she kind of went back and did it again and kind of wrapped it all up. The one particular reaction to the experience that people talk about a lot is learning about how Kusula and others were sold by the Hamians and other Africans into slavery. And it messed her up, right? And so she struggled with that for sure. A lot of what she learned about the kind of traditional structures left her with some grief too, because in a lot of respects, Zora was not the person or the woman that was being described. She lived a very different life. So yeah, she had some difficulties, but you never get a sense of that in Barracoon, right? Because she was keeping her methodology as honest as she could. She wanted him to say without her filter, right? Without her kind of judgment or commentary. And I think it's a powerful testimony to not only her method, but also his memory. And I want y'all to understand the long memory of suffering. It lives in people in ways that you just can't imagine. And so when I'm working through Barracoon, that's the one thing, the level of detail that he has, right? Is because that separation was so traumatic and it registered in his brain. It's a scar. That's why I use that word in my own remarks. So, yeah.
So speaking again to the fact that the book, again, I'm at a loss for words of how to put it, but her really said, no, we're going to make sure that what he said and how he said it is the way it's going to be presented.
Yes.
Because when Viking Press initially wanted to print the book and they wanted to clean it up to standard English, she was not having that.
Right.
No. And girlfriend, she probably needed the money.
Sure.
But she stuck to her convictions and her belief about, his honesty and black people. And, it was just so important that the book stayed until, it was able to, come out the way that he brought it.
Right on the money,
You talk
yes.
about the souls of black folks.
Yes, yeah. Bernadette, you make me think of how I see Hurston as the first author of that phrase from an Erykah Badu song where she says, "I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit." It is in some ways surprising that we have so much of Hurston's work. True, there has been lots of recovery work, but that she was as published as she was because she told people no all the time about what she wasn't going to change in terms of her work, because she wanted to keep it as honest, And I think that that's a really important thing to underscore about who she was as an artist, but also as an anthropologist, and why she stayed poor. That's for sure.
I'm going to come to you, Charmaine, but I think one of the arguments that you hear in the hip hop community is authenticity and truth and being real. And I would think as I think back in my own literary history, there are two people who would have embraced hip hop in a major way. One would be William Shakespeare. I think he would embrace hip hop because he would have recognized that the hip hop artists were creating the new language like he did, and the unnatural rhyme scheme and the context that's greater than the context. But also, I think Zora Neale Hurston would have embraced the hip hop generation, too, because she would have seen young women and fighting against misogyny and standard role play, but also she would have appreciated the men who were just telling the truth, just the way it is happening, and bitter truth, the hard truth sometimes.
Right. So before we get to our man, I think that the great thing about talking about Hurston as many times as we can is that you start to learn that she really is a foremother of a lot of things. Now, if you have heard any recordings of Hurston, you know she was doing some dozens and the like. So she was early hip hop, right? Before it was hip hop, right? No, I mean, if you hear her, her voice and the way she talked, but also in her work, she really focuses on a lot of verbal play, which is what hip hop is. What good hip hop is.
Good hip hop is. Charmaine, and then I'll come to you, Jomo.
And I want to say, people, there's water and fruit on the table. Please partake.
We're still live streaming.
I appreciate what you said about like Me Too and Zora Neale's characters, and how a lot of times people do fall into that stereotypical thinking of those characters. I think with Missy May, a lot of times people like to hate on her decisions and the actions that she takes in the play, or in the story, rather. But they don't really recognize like the exploitation that she like goes through in that story. And that's like something that I've had to kind of like, how do I process that as somebody who has also gone through their own like story and history. So yeah, I just really appreciate it.
So can I just say one thing about that? The production was really powerful for me because of the way you all ended the experience there. So the family stays intact as far as we know, right? Yeah. And what you don't want to lose sight of is that Missy May has agency. She makes a choice, right? Yeah. You want to say it's right or wrong, but she makes a choice. And that's a powerful kind of image, especially at that time, of a woman in a marriage, right? You know, the husband's decision goes kind of thing. And there's lots of that playing out in the story and in your production of it. But the fact that both people choose to stay. Now, there are lots of circumstances that bring that about. But again, you might typically think, well, that's just the end of that relationship. But no, right? Now, there's a lot of real history around people having outside children and couples staying together, right? I mean, so like, if you were really being honest about the experience, as I think Hurston was trying to do there, you would see that story, you would see this play and go, that's familiar. I know something like that. I know an experience like that, lots of experiences like that. So
Jomo, who played Slimmons
Yes.
in Gilded Sixpence, I think he would say we had some very lively conversations around the roles in both of the plays.
Sure.
And I think as much as anything, trying to balance what she wrote about in 1927, 1931, and what the reality is today, you know, and how do you balance history and the present in a way to gain. But I'll let Jomo speak to that himself because we had some eye-opening conversations.
Well, I mean, speaking of Missy May's agency, we had some real conversations about whose fault it was, whether it was Joe's fault for pushing Missy May towards Slimmons. We were trying to just work it from every possible angle. But what I was thinking about with Miss Hurston is that she's amazing. She's not just an artist, but she's a scientist. She's a mathematician. And I love how she is just completely willing to take a back seat with Barracoon and just let this man tell his story. And she's just, she just wants to get it down. She wants to get it out of him. And even in her fictional works, she wants the language true, and she wants the situations to reflect the reality of the situations and the truth of what the people were actually going through at the time. She's wonderful. I wish we could go back in time and she could meet this woman.
Yeah. So one of the most informative conversations I had outside of the kind of academic and literary context that reinforced what you're saying was with a medical doctor.
With what?
A medical doctor who, talking to me and, asking me what I did and we came up upon one of his favorite authors is Zora and Hurston. I'm like, oh, and why is that? He said, because in Their Eyes Are Watching God, what happens to Tea Cake, the way that she wrote about his illness, and I forget what it is now, was as textbook accurate as you could ever find. And he said when he stumbled across that, I have got to read who this woman is and learn more about her. And I was just like, exactly. If you take the time to do your work like she did her work, you will come to realize that she was very, very committed to method and accuracy and honesty. Even though she played a lot too. Let's not deny that. She played a lot as well.
One of the things, I wish Jeannie Carson were here, who played Zora in our productions. One of the challenges that she had, and as a director I had also, was when was she being a documentarian and when was she being a poet? And we had to break that down. And one of the things as a director that you learn is sometimes you got to get out of an actor's way. I couldn't say to Jeannie, this is when she's being a documentarian and this is when she's being a poet. You have to make that decision yourself. The truth that you bring to it it's got to be your truth as well as her truth. So you saw the performance.
I did. And enjoyed both of them very much.
So how would you differentiate between when she's being a documentarian and when she's being a poet?
Wow, that's a good question. One of the things I liked about the production, two primary things, of course, is that the Hurston role is so palpable that you decided to kind of say, let's make a narrator here who is Hurston but isn't necessarily Hurston, right?
Yes.
And just the setup and the staging of it was just really thoughtful and really provocative. There was that moment where narrator Hurston gets in the car with Missy May, and I said that is such a really smart moment because, again, if you know Hurston, how she did her kind of field work.
She got in the car with Delia. Yeah.
Oh, it was Delia. That's right. Yes. With Delia.
With in the buckboard.
That's right. She would camp with folks, right? So when they were going to do work in the fields, she was doing it too, right? And I saw that moment. I said, "That's brilliant. You were being honest to her biography in some ways." So I think that the way I would respond to the poet documentarian is that maybe it's seamless. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't think of it as a dichotomy there, because the reality is, I think the best poets are the best documentarians, and if you are a good documentarian, your stuff reads as poetry, right? Maybe that's it. But if you all aren't having those kinds of discussions, if you aren't having the kinds of discussions that you all talking about earlier, then you're not doing the work to produce the work, I think, right? And I know how y'all do it, Mixed Magic, so of course you're going to have those conversations and debates because you want to bring the honesty to the work too.
Well, so you have to bring not only the author's honesty, you have to bring the actor's honesty too, because just as I'm gonna take one more question or two more questions from anyone who might have one. You have a question? And then I'll come to you, Bill.
Kind of and question all mixed in together.
Great.
If there's time. So I'm an anthropologist, and it's just a little bit of background. I went to Oberlin College, and I majored in anthropology there, but I didn't learn about Zora Neale Hurston in my anthropology classes. I learned about her in a Black Studies class, a literature class with Calvin Hurston. And when I learned that she was an anthropologist and a folklorist, and I teach folklore, I wanted to learn more about her, and over time did, and I am fascinated by the early period of American anthropology anthropology and the fact that she studied with Franz Boas and Margaret Mead and all of that.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I continually return to that has been raised here, and sort of, it is the tension between the artist and the ethnographer. And one of the things that I was thinking as I listened to
Casula.
Casala, recounting, and I read that part to myself. His memory of the gender roles was this a recognition that comes from anthropology that he is a positioned subject. That he was a 19-year-old young man, or a young man growing up in his community and perceiving the gender roles in society through his lens. And so his recounting of it is not necessarily, and I may be stepping on some on shaky ground here, but from my perspective, his recounting of it is not necessarily the total story.
Sure.
It's his perspective.
Sure.
Right.
And so then when you think about what happens later on in the stories in the 1920s, to what extent are these stories, is she weaving in stories from her own life and from those that she's observed, as well as the artist's eye and reflection of those stories? So the capacity to pull those apart from an anthropological perspective is really important in all these levels. And one more point is that when we go back and we think about what were the gender roles in African societies at that time, how do we tease out, this is a kind of a constant question of scholars, historians, and anthropologists, how do we tease out the impact of colonialism
on that,
and the imposition of white rule, in terms of how those gender roles played out.
Right.
So there's all kinds of
Sure.
things mixed in terms of outside forces and the blend of the ethnographer's perspective and the artist's intentions.
Right.
So just sort of, those are my reflections. I'm just curious how you pull those apart, and from a scholarly point of view,
Sure.
do you need to pull those apart? I think you kind of do.
Right.
And so I'm curious how you do that.
So I think context matters. I think, first of all, I'm not an anthropologist, obviously, and so I'm glad that you were here to offer that perspective. I should say that this question came up for me many years ago as a student of Ruth Bahar's, where in her, who's an anthropologist that I studied with at University of Michigan, when we had her, when we had in her course Blurred Genres, and she talked about the way in which autobiography, ethnography, and fiction do this kind of crossing and the implications and complications that come from that, right? And I think Hurston is such a great case study for anthropologists, especially in trying to understand that. Most anthropologists aren't doing the kind of other genre work that Hurston is, but maybe there is some way in which those other genres can inform anthropological practice. I think there's an argument to be made in her corpus for that, right? Now, that's as far as I'm going to go, speaking from my very, very novice anthropological understanding. In terms of the literary side, what I like to focus on too is the way in which language kind of pulls all those genres together for Hurston, right? And that's really the linchpin of it all. And so the resonance of the gender roles, I think, is interesting too, because how much of what's happening in 1920s America is also informing how she decides to pull out, not so much in Barracoon, although there may be an argument for that, but what she does in Sweat and Gilded Six Bits. I mean, she is really kind of speaking to that. So the tension between what was raised in the kind of account from Casula, I don't know if she's thinking about it explicitly in her stuff, but I can't imagine that she's not thinking about it implicitly too, right? It's very complicated. It's very interesting, and so that you learned about Hurston, where you learned about her, is interesting too, because now, of course, she is considered one of our early anthropologists, and that's great. But what would have been anthropological study in the 21st century if she had been kind of included along with Mead and Benedict and the like? So, but yeah.
I just want to just briefly talk about, just for a second, the unnatural nature of colonialism and what it did to a people. I often tell a story of, in Africa, for instance, animals and human beings are not that far apart in their behavior in many ways. But because the big bull elephants were being killed off, the juvenile males were doing uncharacteristic things. They were just doing some horrible things. And the roles of the female elephant in the herd is to be the leader. The bull's job is to be a protector and to keep the young males in check until they have